Jake Paul's California mansion has been raided by the FBI, multiple news organizations report. You can see in this aerial footage agents in uniform outside his home in Calabasas.
When fighters like Anthony Joshua get mentioned, they're not just talking about a single event. They're talking about what happens when the safe bubble bursts and a competitor faces someone who can't be managed, controlled, or protected by contract fine print. Because real competition has a way of showing weaknesses that clever marketing can only hide for so long.
Jake Paul's attorney says he was out of state and not at his Calabasas home during that raid today. The FBI says they're investigating allegations of criminal acts for an incident that he's known for being in the public eye. But today, YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
This whole drama keeps people hooked because every accusation sparks another video, another interview, another denial, and another meltdown. It creates this endless cycle where suspicion becomes pure entertainment, and the controversy itself turns into the main product that drives views, engagement, and non-stop arguments throughout combat sports media. From a content perspective, this narrative hits all the right buttons because it mixes fear, scandal, power players, and mysteries that never get solved. It keeps pulling viewers in with the hint that the next bombshell might either prove what they've been thinking all along or totally destroy everything they thought they knew.
Right, because of the weight differences, the weight difference in there. I only know one man that'll do the weight difference like that, and that's the Bronze Bomber. You know, for me, in my opinion, I think it's scripted a little bit because, you know, of the weight difference, and, you know, Joshua is a former, you know, champion. And also, you know, he's current, he's active, you know, and this is going to be the first time that we see Paul, you know, fighting an active fighter. You know what I mean? We seen the Mike Tyson, that was all fun, that was cute, you know what I'm saying? It's fun and games and stuff, but now you're dealing with a real professional.
This isn't really just about Jake Paul the person. It's about this bigger clash between old-school fighting values and social media era promotion, where managing image, going viral, and looking good sometimes matters more than the raw truth that defines fighting at the top level. Whether Jake Paul can shake off this credibility problem doesn't depend on fancy speeches or comeback videos. It comes down to decisions. If his future fights choose real risk over playing it safe, openness over tight control, and genuine competition over pure show business, then maybe opinions can shift. But if we keep seeing the same old playbook, fans will conclude that once the magic trick got exposed, it was never actually real to begin with.
Leaked script, have you seen this?
Move on. If people think that he's gonna do a quick two-step and do this, and this, I hope he just goes out and takes his head clean off with the first punch and lets him know who Tommy Fury actually is. There's one interview, and I'm going to name now, Lyndon Arthur, absolute fantastic, that man. I don't read that much on social media because it's all bullshit, but Lyndon Arthur, thank you very much. From me to you, you said something about Tommy being a proper fighter, can really punch, one of the hardest punches he's been in. Now for Lyndon Arthur to go and say that, Lyndon Arthur is a proper hard, tough man, we all know that. So Lyndon, respect, thank you.
The turning point in how people saw Jake Paul wasn't about one punch or one evening. It was this gradual awakening among boxing and MMA audiences that flashy presentation, brand building, and cherry-picked opponents had slowly taken over from pure competitive spirit. When heavyweight names like Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Oscar De La Hoya, Dana White, and Michael Bisping started weighing in, the sports world began seeing Paul less as a legitimate fighter and more as a symbol of this manufactured era where storylines get promoted harder than actual skill.
At any point, did you start to take your foot off the gas just a little bit because you noticed he was tiring out?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a bit. You know, I wanted to give the fans a show, but I didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt.
Did you carry Mike?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah, like there was a point where, you know, I was just like, okay, he's not really engaging back. And so I don't know if he's tired or whatever. And I could just tell, you know, his age was showing a little bit. And I just have so much respect for him. And that like violence war thing between us, like after he slapped me, I wanted to be aggressive and take him down and knock him out and all that stuff. But that kind of went away as the rounds went on.
In real combat sports history, genuine moments of truth are rarely neat or movie-like. Jake Paul's story exists in that murky space, where public opinion, whispered doubts, and years of online arguments crash into each other. His rise was never purely about wins and losses. It was about how those victories got packaged, justified, defended, and blown up until fans started wondering if they were watching actual competition or just entertainment dressed up as fighting. When talk of fixed fights started spreading, it didn't come out of nowhere. Respected fighters like Deontay Wilder openly questioned whether Paul's matches were legitimate. Oscar de la Hoya said what many insiders were thinking privately. Even casual watchers started noticing weird patterns with glove regulations, round lengths, opponent choices, and promotional control that felt more like exhibitions than the brutal reality of real professional boxing.
If taking Viagra counts, then yes.
I'm gonna need a yes or a no.
No.
It's true.
The controversy exploded when Jake Paul himself admitted to holding back during certain moments. Standing alone, that might sound like good sportsmanship. But given everything else, it lit up the skepticism because in elite boxing, you don't manage the danger level for your opponent. When that confession spread online, it reinforced the idea that some fights were choreographed for show rather than settled by pure competitive drive. The drug testing situation made things worse because Dana White's public challenge wasn't presented as rumors, but as a transparency demand from someone claiming to be legitimate. Without publicly released, independently verified test results, critics filled that silence with speculation, connecting visible physical changes, past resistance to strict anti-doping requirements, and insider comments into a story that wouldn't go away.
Publicly stated that I use cocaine. I do not. So I told you, you could randomly cocaine test me for the next 10 years. I believe that you're a cheater, and I believe that you use steroids. So I want to randomly steroid test you for the next 2 years. And that thing that you came out with today, nobody on earth thinks that you really wrote that. You're too stupid.
Medical expert opinions, social media breakdowns, and commentary from people like Dylan Dennis kept adding fuel. Not because accusations by themselves proved anything, but because all these voices together created this atmosphere where denying everything felt weaker than just being honest. Every refusal to share documentation became another unanswered question, piling onto an already massive list of concerns. When MVP executives responded with heavy legal language and lawsuit threats, those tactics might work in high-stakes business, but they usually backfire in fight culture, where being transparent earns respect. Threatening court action doesn't convince fans that results are genuine. It just shows that protecting image has become more important than honest accountability.
That I brought it up wants to do testing. And he wants to do a set date before the fight. Okay? So he did the cycle, he did whatever, and now he's gonna try to take a piss test and clear it and be like, oh, I'm clean. That doesn't count. Okay? It doesn't count. With the money that he has, you can have a doctor clean your system in over 24 hours. Cheeto Vera just went on that podcast and said, you know that. So him doing this is another scam that he does. He's a bullshit artist. He just lies. Everybody knows he's on juice. He's admitted to taking peptides. There's doctors that have him in the office saying we're giving him peptides on their website. So like, it's just bullshit. And I don't even care about the steroids thing. It's just like, what are we doing here? He has every advantage. He gets to pick the refs. He gets to pick the fucking judge. It's like, come on.
Dylan Dennis, who had his own messy history with Jake Paul, started posting photos as evidence. Michael Bisping's criticism hit harder precisely because it stayed calm and came from experience. He pointed out that Paul's opponents were usually retired, past their prime, or celebrity types, and that his one fight against an actual peer boxer, Tommy Fury, ended in defeat. This fact backs up critics who argue you can't claim legitimacy without repeatedly facing hungry professionals in their prime.
There has never once in Jake Paul's career been any talk of that sort, of anything to do with the fight being anything but a real fight that has exactly the same situation as any professional fight. And that's exactly the same thing here for the Anthony Joshua fight. It's just beyond mind-blowing that people would think that. Anthony Joshua was on record saying that if he didn't finish him in the first round, that would be disappointing, that it would be a failure. the narrative changed as we got closer to fight night and obviously post-fight, and I understand why, but they were pretty adamant it would take max 2 rounds to knock out Jake Paul.
The FBI raid storyline added another perception problem. Even when charges get dropped or situations stay unresolved, being constantly connected to controversy shapes what people believe. In the fight world, where reputation counts as much as your record, every headline adds to the feeling that chaos follows Paul wherever he's trying to monetize spectacle.
For being in the public eye, but today YouTube star Jake Paul is making headlines after an FBI raid at his home in Calabasas. Sky 5 was over the scene Wednesday morning as federal agents entered Paul's home in a gated community off Mulholland Highway. 24 feds, some in tactical gear, could be seen carrying evidence from the property, including several firearms. After the search, a SWAT team was seen leaving in a procession of law enforcement vehicles.
The main point isn't that every fight was staged or every accusation was accurate. It's that the whole system around Jake Paul's boxing career seems carefully constructed, from opponent selection to promotional storytelling, creating this environment where fans feel tricked into believing in authenticity without getting the proof that normally earns that trust. Court proceedings might drag on for years, but for Anthony Joshua, recovery doesn't follow legal schedules because grief moves unpredictably. Even if justice gets pursued, no verdict can bring back what was lost or rewind the moment when everything changed. Gerald Miller's emotional reaction shows another side, proving that even damaged relationships dissolve when facing death, because tragedy reminds people that competition is temporary, but human empathy kicks in when the stakes become undeniably real. Fans watching this play out have to face their own responsibility, because clicks, comments, and outrage drive narratives that can make pain worse. Listening to people like Johnny Nelson means taking a step back, remembering that behind every update is someone trying to survive something unthinkable. Anthony Joshua's boxing future will always get discussed, but his future as a man dealing with loss matters more. Whether he fights again or not, this chapter will influence how he handles life, relationships, and responsibility far beyond any ring. The bigger lesson for combat sports is hard to swallow but necessary, because if the culture keeps rewarding recklessness without reflection, more lives risk getting caught in the damage. Voices like Eddie Hearn and Tyson Fury are trying to steer the conversation back toward responsibility. In the end, this story isn't about picking heroes or villains. It's about acknowledging consequences. Because when lives get lost and trauma stays, the only meaningful response is honesty, restraint, and learning. Whether boxing pays attention might determine if tragedies like this stay rare or become normal. What sticks most when thinking about Anthony Joshua isn't the lawsuit or the headlines, but the quiet that follows tragedy. When the noise dies down and cameras move on, a man gets left replaying moments he can't change. No advice from Eddie Hearn or sympathy from Tyson Fury can fully prepare him for the long nights where memory becomes the toughest opponent he's ever faced. It's tempting for fans to simplify this situation into teams, picking Anthony Joshua or Jake Paul, like a fight prediction. But real life doesn't work on scorecards, and people like Johnny Nelson keep reminding everyone that grief doesn't care about internet arguments, because losing people is permanent and doesn't care about opinions. From a human angle, Eddie Hearn's approach feels less like business management and more like protection, because when someone you've worked with for years almost loses everything in seconds, being professional turns into something defensive. His direct tone suggests someone trying to protect Anthony Joshua from getting consumed by a system that moves on too fast. Tyson Fury's response hits home because he knows chaos personally, understanding how quickly stories can flip from victory to disaster. When he talks about families and loved ones, it sounds like a warning to the entire fight community that the tough guy act they sell can never replace the vulnerability they live with every day. The opinions of Duke McKenzie and Johnny Nelson carry weight because they represent wisdom rather than hype. When they criticize Jake Paul, it feels grounded in genuine concern for a sport they love, frustrated by a culture where spectacle sometimes outpaces responsibility, leaving people exposed to consequences they never agreed to. Anthony Joshua surviving while sitting in the back seat is a detail that carries crushing weight because survival can feel like punishment when it comes with loss. That knowledge alone can completely change someone's identity, turning confidence into caution and ambition into deep thought almost overnight. For Jake Paul, being connected to this story might become a defining moment, not because of court results, but because public opinion hardens fast. Once people link your name with recklessness and tragedy, fixing that image requires humility and accountability that fame doesn't naturally provide. What disturbs many fans is how quickly celebration became mourning. Because one moment, Anthony Joshua was dominating headlines for athletic achievements, and the next he was fighting for emotional survival, showing how razor-thin the line really is between victory and devastation in elite athletes' lives. Carl Frosch's frustration reflects a wider exhaustion within boxing, where many feel the sport is being torn between legacy and spectacle. This incident forces uncomfortable questions about how far entertainment can push before it crashes into reality in ways that can't be undone.